No.
Okay, we are alive. Everybody, known as spouse.
Hello, how is everybody doing?
I think Brendan's joining. So I'm just gonna check to make sure that they got hung up in the lobby. Oh.
Sam, I see the shack. You can say Sam, I see.
I see that said qu'ils ont ajouté le fond, il y en avait une qui l'ont ajouté, celui-là.
C'était un boucher, j'ai quand je suis prêt. Peut-être je n'ai pas.
We do have quorum. Oh, so I do know, I believe Brendan's going to be joining us as well. So, but only if you like, or wait another minute or two.
Actually, may as well start. I mean, there's a lot
It
of.
always takes us.
That's true. We may as well get going. So, all right, we have quorum, so we'll call the meeting to order at 4:33 p.m. Taking good time already. Also, I just want to acknowledge that I think this is the most people we've had for an in-person portion of the meeting since the pandemic. So this is exciting. And it's so nice to be able to meet people in person. But by saying that, by no means do I not appreciate everybody who's joining us online. It's also spectacular to have you with us as well. So to start things off, let me just pull up our agenda. We'll begin with our land acknowledgement. So I'd like to acknowledge with respect that we are in the Robinson Huron Treaty Territory, and the land on which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and known as Bawatings. Bawatings is the home of Garden River First Nation, Batchewana First Nation, and the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. The next item on our agenda is the adoption of minutes. These were included in the agenda package. And if you are at a computer and you don't happen to have your agenda with you, you can go to the city's corporate calendar and open the agenda, and those minutes are attached in the agenda there as well. Or for anybody who's viewing at home and didn't get, who wouldn't necessarily know that you were doing, so you can go there. So giving people a minute to review that. Do I have a mover for the minutes of March 15th, 2023? Moved by Larry. I think I was seconded. I believe so. If my recollection is correct. And we on the second, your book listed as being, oh wait, no, your list is being absent. Is that a correction that we need?
No, I don't. I think you were here for that one.
I don't think I was.
So, okay. So it's moved by Jonathan and seconded by. What else? We had Miranda, Jane, Richard, Brennan. Oh, Jane seconds. All right. Any discussion on the minutes? Are there any errors or omissions that need to be amended? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise your hand, indicate your ascension. Anybody opposed, please indicate so now. Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously. The next item is the declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'm going to spend just a brief moment of time on this, just for clarification, because this is a moment where this is most likely where we will have the most declarations of any of our meetings related to our assessment of the Arts and Culture Assistance Program applications. So defining what a conflict of interest or a pecuniary interest might be, we can look to the ACAP guidelines where it says situations of potential conflict may occur if a cultural vitality committee member has direct financial interest in the success or failure of an applicant's project, whether they have an interest based on the fact that an applicant's project involves a spouse or partner or an immediate family member, whether they have a personal interest in specific applications other than what is normally expected of interested members of the cultural community, and for any other reason is unable to objectively assess an application. So this last criteria can be quite broad, but it's fundamentally a matter of personal reflection. We're a big community, but we're also a small city. And simply being familiar with an applicant or attending their events or being excited about an application is not in itself a conflict of interest. Similarly, being a person of Indigenous ancestry or Métis ancestry, for instance, wouldn't put you in a conflict with an application from the MNO, so long as you were not directly benefiting personally from that application. And we could say the same thing for if you're a member of a Francophone community assessing the Saltwater Funds application, or a member of the community of Latin heritage assessing NOLA's application, or any of these other potential relations that we might expect. So the conflict in this case arises if you feel that you cannot be fair in your assessment. So it's more of a matter of personal reflection. So with that, I have to declare a conflict with the application from NOLA. If there's any other declarations. Donna?
I declare a conflict, as I have in the past and will continue to do on all applications, as an employee of the Algoma Arts Festival Association, which regularly applies for funding each year. I call that a conflict for myself. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Donna. Any other declarations of pecuniary interest or conflict?
Over the Rainbow is associated with the theater center.
Great. So we've got Donna on all applications, Larry on Over the Rainbow. Any other declarations? Seeing none, we will proceed. The next item is the adoption of the agenda. So one thing that I wanted to add here is a request that we add as a discussion item under new business, the annual cultural forum for focus, and as an item for the focus of a future meeting. We won't get to it today, but just wanted to put it on the agenda. And then also based on previous history of how long it takes to assess these applications, I'd also recommend that we add selection of the date for our next meeting, and that we actually do that before we start assessing the applications, because otherwise people will drop off and we'll lose quorum before we is there any objection to those additions? No. No? Okay, so
We want to open to 5.2 and 5.3.
Oh.
Before we get into the discussion.
oh sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Sean,
Yeah.
can I ask you a question? So I just for clarity, the cultural forum item, you said this is a sort of a notice
Yeah.
of item for that we'll take up next time? Okay, because if it was something that we were going to discuss today, I'd certainly want to be part of that. Thanks.
No problem. And we'll get to that, the brief, I'll explain the intent behind it when we get to that item too, so it won't be too much longer. Any other additions to the agenda? Seeing none, motion to approve the agenda as amended. Moved by Larry, seconded by Donna. All those in favor, any discussion, sorry? People are jumping ahead. Okay, great. All those in favor? Those hands, I assume are in favor. Great. I don't see anybody left, so motion carries. Business arising, public art project. So we have a motion in our agenda. So this is the request for 2 members to assist city staff in the selection of art for public art displays, including the Sioux College art projects and Pall Mall Alley, as well as others that may arise over the course of the year. Would you like to? Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so we do have, in the past, we had a resolution for each of the projects. Just with the timing of everything starting to happen over the summer and doing the advertisement for Pall Mall later, we thought it would be beneficial to select the 2 members that might be interested in participating in the review. So the 2 projects, each year we look at Sioux College. So they have done the traffic wraps in the past. This year it's slightly different. They're actually going to be wrapping panels. So their graphic design program will wrap the panels, and the panels will actually be inset into the back of North Street Ball Diamonds. So I don't know if everybody's familiar, but when you go down North Street, there's a large back of where the stands are that's very, very visible from the street. And it's frequently tagged with graffiti. So we thought that might be a great place to display the artwork this year. And it becomes a real, visual piece at North Street Ball Diamonds. So looking for somebody to assist with that, as well as the selection of the 6 pieces of artwork that go into Pall Mall Alley.
Thanks, Virginia. Are there any volunteers for this?
What is,
Oh, sorry.
murals?
Yeah, so the graphic design program students are tasked with doing some type of development based on a theme. And then they come up with their designs. The designs are then submitted to us through their teacher. The teacher sits on the panel, as well as city staff and our graphic design staff.
Sioux College?
Yes, so that's for one of the projects. And different designs are submitted, and then we move through the selection process, provide the students with feedback, so it becomes that educational opportunity for them to be able to, get feedback from a client. And yeah, so it's a great learning opportunity. And then the other one is the artwork for Pall Mall. So there's 2 different types of projects, and that's a call that goes out to all members of the community who are interested in submitting their art pieces for potential display.
What time commitment does it require?
Um,
And when?
The designs for Sioux College will be coming to us in May. And then we'll be reviewing the selection. So it depends on the number of students. I haven't got a firm number there, but usually there's 10 to 15 submissions that we get to look at. We'll be selecting 5 because there's 5 panels. Pall Mall is definitely a longer process. Miranda can provide some, she's participated in the past. There's a lot more submissions that come in. So it really varies the amount of time based off of the number of submissions, and that would be a fall process in October, November.
Any other questions?
Volunteer for Pall Mall.
For Pall Mall,
Yeah.
did you want to do the Sioux College as well? We were hoping to have 2 people that'll do both projects.
When is the?
It would probably be sometime late May, early June for Sioux College. And then late fall for Pall Mall.
Okay,
Any?
I help if nobody else is interested. If anybody else is interested, I'll back away.
So we have Larry and Isabel, and then Miranda, are you volunteering or do you have a question?
I'm volunteering, but I also don't want to take an opportunity away from somebody if Larry is eager and interested. So
Well, I don't lack for things to do, so,
So, Brennan, is that?
Yeah.
So,
we'll do it next time.
perfect. So do we have a mover? Moved by Larry, seconded by Jane. Resolved that the Cultural Vitality Committee appoint Isabelle Michaud and Miranda Bouchard to participate in a task force along with Manager of Recreation Culture, Arts and Culture Lead, Chief Sign Technician with the review and selection of art for Pall Mall Alley and Sioux College student art projects. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please indicate so. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. All right. The next item would be the 5.2, which is the Arts and Culture Forum. So this is something that we have had really on the back burner for some time. It is something that the cultural policy has set out an aspiration to hold a biannual forum on the arts and culture sector in the city of Sault Ste. Marie, and that this would be one of the responsibilities of the Cultural Vitality Committee or the Cultural Advisory Board for the reorganization. The purpose of, well, I think that having it on the next functional or next regular meetings agenda, let's say, would be an opportunity for us to flesh out what that may look like. I know that we've talked about, and I think this session as well will be really informative for all of us, especially new members, about the types of feedback we need on the Arts and Culture Assistance Program itself, how we can improve the application process, how we can provide information to prospective applicants and so on, as well as an opportunity for actors within the sector to just share information with one another, to be able to network with one another, to share common issues that exist that we're experiencing within the sector and across different, whether it's among actors within the theater scene or music or literary ventures, to be able to come together around some of these issues, and then potentially in the future, it could also be an opportunity for us to build in some of those capacity building opportunities that might be identified during this discussion as well. But again, something for further discussion at future meetings. But if there's any questions or thoughts initially that anybody would like to share, if there's no decision item here, the floor is open. Oh, Virginia.
Leith and I had an opportunity just to talk about it quickly. And I'm glad you brought it forward, and we can have a much larger discussion at the next meeting. But we thought maybe from a timing perspective, it could be really nicely tied into Culture Days, which takes place at the end of September. It gives us a good amount of time to plan, and it would be a nice activity to do during that time frame as we start to kick off and celebrate Culture Days. That was just odd.
I see some excitement expressed and among the Zoom or some of the Zoom parties. Great. Any other thoughts, comments?
Culture Days is a month long now.
Mhm.
It used to be shorter.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
All right. If there's no other discussion points, we'll move on to item 5.3, which is the selection of another date for finishing the application. For those of you that are new to the committee, you might think I'm jumping the gun a little bit here, but trust me in that we will not get through 16 applications. It just ain't gonna happen. But anticipating that, we wanted to see when everybody is next available. Alicia, do you have a suggestion of like a time frame?
I think it's feasible to do it before the next council. No?
Our deadline for council for May 1st is today. Okay. So we, as long as we have a decision by, say the week of, by the 17th of May, that will hit the May 29th council meeting. So I would strive to try to have something within that time frame so that we can make sure that we have time to write the report and get it into the council. So latest the week of, ideally the week of the, between the first week of May and the week of May would be great if possible.
So maybe we can look at would this time on May 3rd, if it's 2 weeks from today, does that align with people's schedules? Dawn is waving or nodding yes.
4:30?
Or 30. And everybody, feel free to take a moment. May 3rd? May 3rd. Richard, Jane, does it work for you? Not for Jane, yes for Rich. Jane, is there another?
I have another commitment on May 3rd. Wednesdays are usually just crazy days. I don't know why I overbooked myself on Wednesday. So if I come here, I miss another meeting. So I try to alternate.
How about Tuesday, May 2nd?
If you need me, I can't, I'll already be there on May 2nd for environmental sustainability at that time.
We should be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
May 2nd should be okay.
Which I think that works out okay, Donna, as you would have you've declared conflict anyway, so. This is
Yes,
just,
yes. I know that I know it's been sensitive around quorum. So just, but it wouldn't be the first time anyways, that's where I'll be,
okay.
very
perfect.
close by.
Yeah, you could pop in, declare your conflict. Pop out. Okay, so that works well.
Well, we can sort that out.
Yes, we did.
If that works for the committee, we'll figure it out.
Yes.
May 2nd?
Tuesday, May 2nd.
Okay.
And Miranda, Richard, sorry, I didn't catch if you said that was fine. Not a yes. Okay, great, thank you. Sorry to bog you all down with the calendar roulette, but wanted to make sure we got that queued up. Thank you all for that. Now we can dive into, well, sorry. Next is subcommittee and task force updates, which I assume there are none. There are none. Okay, so now it's new business. And we're starting with the Arts and Culture Assistance Program grant applications. So to start here, I do want to provide a little bit of background, again, for those who are newly joining the committee. I will do my best to be brief. If in being brief, I skip over essential information, please don't hesitate to stop me or call, make a point of information, ask further questions. But the Arts and Culture Assistance Program at the City of Sault Ste. Marie has had a fairly long life. I think it began as the Cultural Financial Assistance Program and was introduced in the mid-1990s, I believe. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2021, it was reformed to be the Arts and Cultural Systems program based on a significant community engagement process that was undertaken through the Future Sault Ste. Marie process, which if anybody was there for that period, or if anyone wasn't there for that period, it was essentially flowing from engagements the city had around diversifying its economy, diversifying the activities of the city of Sault Ste. Marie as well, and the way that the municipal government engages in different aspects of community life. And arts and cultural vitality was one of the main pillars that was identified under this Future Sault Ste. Marie banner. In the engagements that followed from that, there was a desire, I'm skipping a step here. There was also the creation of the community cultural plan that was initiated under that process. And the engagements from that, the development of that plan identified a need for greater resources for arts and culture projects, activities, actors within the city, and a greater role for the city in supporting those endeavors. And that's where the reforms came in. And so this very much shaped the structure of the program that we are administering today. There are a number of different streams in the Arts and Culture Assistance Program. These aren't separate pots of money, but they are different types of activities or needs, or whether it's organizations or individual artists or collectives of artists that allow us to group similar items together in our deliberations around the applications, as well as to track the kinds of activities that we are getting requests for. And also there are some variations in the applications and these criteria based on what different applicants are applying for. So these streams include project grants, and there are both small projects and large projects. And one of the other differences between these streams is it determines the amount of funding you can apply for. So for example, small project grants, the maximum amount that you can request is $2,999, and it can be up to 100% of the projected budget for whatever activity. Large projects, the amounts that can be requested range from $3,000 up to $20,000, but it's to a maximum of 75% of the project budget. Now, in the spreadsheet that Alicia distributed to each of us earlier, she has already identified if there's a discrepancy between the dollar amount that was requested versus what the maximum allowable amount is. So if the maximum amount is lower than the requested amount, the most that we can actually give an applicant is that maximum number. So just to be aware of that, it's not a disqualifying feature of an application. It just means we can only give them that much money if they were to get everything that they asked for. It was a perfect application. The next item in the streams are operating grants. So operating assistance grants are again divided into two subcategories. There's operational assistance and seed funding. And these grants are subject to a new application process each year. The operating assistance grants can't exceed a maximum of 25% of the applicant's projected operating budget. So that's, again, part of the rationale for the numbers that you see in your spreadsheet. Then under festival and event grants, we have the community event grants for under $5,000. These are available to support community events that provide opportunities for diverse populations to come together. And the major cultural celebrations, sorry, the community event grants, those are under $5,000, and then there's the major cultural celebrations, which is between $5,000 and $10,000. So there isn't a stipulation in terms of the portion of the budget here, but there are maximums in terms of the total that can be requested. And then last but not least, there is a cultural diversity grant stream, which is to support small to large scale public and community arts, culture, and heritage projects produced by Sault Ste. Marie and area priority groups, including Indigenous, New Canadian, LGBTQ+, and other underrepresented cultural groups in Sault Ste. Marie. They can be incorporated not-for-profits, cultural and heritage organizations, unincorporated artists, or individual cultural producers or practitioners who fall within one or more of those categories. So that's some background on the different streams and the purposes that they serve. Again, I also just want to clarify that we saw quite a diversity in the different types of applications that we received for this intake. So I just wanted to affirm that individuals can apply and are eligible for grants for individual artistic practice, as well as organizations. So that's not a disqualifying feature or something that would be a matter of impacting the assessment. Great.
I don't say thank you.
Yes, thank you, Nona. We're gonna.
May I raise something at some point, since I think it will be moved for the next meeting? I noticed where people are asking for assistance as a practicing professional artist. Requires, says must have had at least 3 public exhibitions, displays, or performances in person or online in the last year. Most of the applicants in that category have not given what their performances or displays were. Maybe we have time to go back and ask. But it's quite clear, I think. I don't know why the rule was there, but it's there.
That's a very good point, and I think it's a really important point, especially in relation to support material. And this is one of the sort of the recurring themes in the assessment too is the types of support material that we're getting that allow us to actually to judge those things.
Well, these are new applicants. And I suspect the requirement is so that, you know, I can't apply for money and say I'm a specialist in drawing ship support. If I had no background, would you know?
Are the CVs? Because I haven't seen CVs. I didn't include it.
The C sometimes,
Okay,
so it depends on the
okay.
They should include it as proof. I mean, if you have a CV or a CV could be proof of that.
Yeah.
But if they don't provide it, then I think it's a question of in any one of the assessment criteria.
Some of these have CVs, they don't speak to that. They tend to be the ones that are record producing records. You seem to have attracted a lot of those applications this year. And so they talk about the having experience in production. You know, it's all vague, it doesn't say when or where. whether it was this year or 10 years ago, or what they did.
Yeah, and just so, I mean, we are struggling with the applications as well, so we've been trying to find a better software or something that allows us to actually have similar to what you apply for when you're applying for a provincial grant or a federal grant where you've got, you know, expandable sections. We started to look today at forms in Office 365 to see if that's going to help. We've explored Survey Monkey, a whole bunch of different types of applications so that the information is presented in a better way, because, you know, we know it's challenging for all the committee members, so we're continuing to try to work on that. So, you know, now that Alicia's back from maternity leave, that's gonna allow us some time to focus on it over the course of the summer and hopefully improve it for everyone involved. Because even for us assembling and trying to get it out, we're getting everything from hard copies that are coming in to electronic copies. So the way that we get the materials varies from every applicant. So it's a bit of a challenge.
So with the each grant stream, you'll see different types of information. It's not always consistent with the other grant stream. We're incorporating your individuals for the patio.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of variation. And so for it appears that something might be missing, sometimes it's not. It's just not part of the application.
We know work to do to improve the process for us and everyone involved, right from the applicant all the way to the evaluation side of it.
And all the streams are in one pot. Like we're judging them like a big organization with one small.
Yeah.
They go in the same.
Yeah, we had looked at or explored before, if you divvy them out, but you don't know what applications you're going to get at any given time. So if you didn't have anybody that was applying to, say, small grants, and we allocated 20,000 hypothetically to that, and then we got a lot that were applying to large festival grants, the money then isn't allocated because we're very specific about how we were allocating it. So it put different restrictions on how the money is used. So that's some of the challenges that we kind of looked at as we've been, you know, and I think this is one of those things that is going to continually evolve as we hopefully improve the process. Because we do have a lot more, it is more open now than it was before, because we did hear from a lot of the community members that there were no avenues for the seed and the smaller groups to get any funding, because we only focused, or primarily we're focusing on the established organizations. So that was, we heard that really clearly through the consultation phase, so that we could be more open to, you know, emerging artists, startups, events. So that was kind of where we're at. We still have a ways to go to improve the process.
Well, and in your defense, I would also say that this is Canada Council and Ontario Arts Council treat their process the same way. They're constantly learning and revising every single time that they do it. So, don't feel like you've done anything wrong here. It's just part of the process of learning.
I do notice that a lot of those other granting organizations, applications are getting simpler and simpler. This is quite complicated, like this organization for mental health. What is poor, and you go up to excellent. You know, it's all very nuanced. I can't keep that in my head. You love
I
that,
meant this.
you know. So here it is, but.
Any other comments or questions? The next thing that I'll do is do an overview of how we have discussed these applications in the past. We do not have a set in stone process for doing so, but for the last two rounds, we've used the same process that we came to collectively. But before that, are there any questions for clarifying purposes? No? Okay. So just an overview of what we've done in the past. So in terms of the review, you've all seen so far that basically all committee members wishing to participate in the assessment should review the applications ahead of time and submit their scores to Alicia in advance of the meeting. In terms of the deliberations for during the assessment meeting, this will take place in an open meeting of the Cultural Vitality Committee per the requirements of the Municipal Act of Ontario. And committee members take turns leading the discussion on each application, consisting of an overall summary of the application and any questions or comments that they had in relation to the application. The remaining committee members then take turns sharing their comments in relation to the application. The scores that you submitted to Alicia, you can change because this is the whole purpose of the discussion. You know, I know there was a ton of information that was given to you. And it's difficult to sort through it. We each bring different dimensions to our assessment of each application. And so we learn through the discussion process. Sometimes it goes quickly, sometimes it doesn't. So after everyone has had a turn to chime in on an application, there is the opportunity for any individual members to change their scores. Then once we have completed all of the scoring, we have historically been driven by the principle that the proportion of funding recommended is dependent on the scores received by an application, and that priority will be given to the highest scored applications. Applications need to receive a minimum score of 50% of their potential marks to be recommended for funding. However, receiving a score of 50% does not guarantee an application will be funded, as funds will be recommended for distribution beginning from the top scoring application to those of lesser scores until the established funding threshold can't be met for an application. So additional thresholds that reflect differences in the proportion of funding to be recommended may be established by the committee during the meeting to review the applications, but the threshold should be established prior to the discussion of individual applications. And so these thresholds might vary from one intake to another. That's at the will of the committee, and considering the number of applications received and any funds available for distribution. With that said, I want to check in with Alicia. Are there any applications that scored lower than 50%?
Not that I saw. I'm double checking right
No problem. Yeah, it would be 7.5.
now. I couple that were a little bit lower, but the thing that I've seen. So I didn't do an average of all of the totals. Okay, but ultimately I don't see anything that flags.
I gave you one that was lower than 7.5.
Is it possible to do a screen share of the spreadsheet so that we can see the scores? Or is
Yeah.
that? Thank you.
Yeah, that's one. So they've not been told to be a final.
Oh, okay. So these are individuals.
These are individual scores, so that's like ish.
Because we know that one is below 7. I can move along if you want to just take a quick look if that would average out to below 50%. And then, so with this said, I want to check in if there's any desire for any deviation from that process. It's worked well for us in the past, but you know,
I
for
don't have my laptop in front of me, I have my phone, so I'm starting the conversation. I'm going to be looking through my phone like this, so can I just kind of chime in and not have to start any
Sure.
bit?
you can also people remind us.
Okay,
Yeah. It's, okay,
We can look at this.
oh, wonderful.
and the summaries don't get to be super detailed. Right?
Okay.
It's similar to, but again, I know these processes vary with the Ontario Arts Council as well.
Yeah, we have the option of passing if we,
Good point.
yeah,
Who's having-
Yes.
Maybe what I'll do is I'll just stop the share so I can get the scores brought in.
Okay.
And then I'll pull it back up as soon as I got the scores total,
Sure.
just so I don't feel like pressure of being.
Yeah. Yeah. No worries. Sorry about this.
I'm confident that one will pass.
Okay. So, are there any other thoughts on changes to concept that seems to be okay, other than, you know, we have the option of passing when it comes to leading applications? And if anybody is indicating so on Zoom, just open your mic so I can hear you.
Can I make a comment is, so I'm on the tourism board. And so it's the same kind of process, but it's not, for lack of a better word. So, you know, funding applications or come into the tourism board and it's vetted by staff. So staff is the one that goes ahead and collects all of the data and meets with the proponents and follows up questions, et cetera. What I'm finding on this particular process is you've asked. I got my dog.
Oh,
Oh, sorry, we can't hear you, Richard.
So anyways, so what I'm finding is what we're doing is we're asking each board member to put in a tremendous amount of hours, which in doing the evaluation. Now, I don't have a problem in I've read every single application, but I'm not, so you're also having to delve into the budget process and all of the numbers behind it, like the documentation is tremendous. And I'm not sure, I mean, maybe other board members have put in all of the hours to do that, but it just seems like a tremendous effort that could be done by staff. And then staff would make the recommendations forward, and then we can ask questions as we go forward, rather than all of this process that seems to be in place. That's my personal opinion, and maybe I'm off base on where you've gone, but that's certainly not what we do in tourism.
just to clarify, there is a portion of staff vetting of the applications, just to make sure that where an applicant hasn't provided something that's integral to the application, it's usually after frequent requests from staff to provide that information. So I just wanted to clarify that there is staff vetting currently involved in that, but there are still, like you said, it is still a considerable investment of time for board members, and if that mirrors similar jury processes for other arts and culture organizations. But are there any other comments?
Just to speak to the same point. I don't know how you could ask intelligent questions to staff if you hadn't read it. This is such a subjective thing. You know, I might score differently depending on what I had for breakfast that day. But there is power in a number of people. In my own work before, I always found great power in juries because, you know, the collective opinion tends to have an effect. So yeah, you're reading till your eyeballs are rolling forward. I don't know if there's any other way around. I can't speak to the tourism board. You know, it may be a little more black and white.
Any other? Oh, I think there's something in the chat.
Just Jane saying that her audio is dropping in and out, so she's going to step out for a moment and come back in.
Okay. How many do we need? But Donna is. Donna counts, she's just.
Oh, yeah.
And, okay, but also I just want to acknowledge. Today always involves a lot of stress and pressure on the staff here, so I just want to commend you for doing such a great job covering all these things. Okay, so it sounds like no immediate revisions for the present process. Is there a desire for a new threshold? So is there a need to raise the threshold from the current 50% cutoff that you would suggest to see?
At the OAC, it's 60.
60? So we have a,
It worries me that we don't have enough money to, to do everything we'd like. And I wonder if we shouldn't raise it a little.
so why don't we call that a motion to raise it to 60%? Is there further discussion on that? Any in favor, opposition?
I feel in favor of that.
Miranda's in favor of that as well. How do you feel about that, Richard? Oh, you're currently on mute.
I'm fine with that.
Jane, I don't know if you're back.
I'm in and out. I'm missing a lot of what is being said, so I didn't hear the last conversation because I was dropping in and out.
No problem, Jane. So the question was just whether we should raise the threshold to 60% rather than 50%. So that for one, that aligns with what is frequently the cutoff threshold for funding with the Ontario Arts Council. And it reflects the fact that we hardly ever, and today is no exception, we have twice as many requests as we have, more than twice as many, or a request for twice as much money as we actually have to disperse. So how do you feel about raising the threshold, Jane?
In favor?
Okay, so that's unanimous then. We'll increase the threshold to 60%. All right, so with that, you still need more time.
I'm still working on this.
Okay, no worries.
No.
I've got the first one down. We'll just start there.
We'll start with the first one. How about to take pressure off everybody? I'll start with the first application, which was, is this the Self-Focus Fund?
Yeah, I will bring it. I'm just gonna give this last number to Ellen because we're talking and then.
Oh, no problem. So this first application is from the Self-Focus Fund de Sault-Saint-Marie. And it's for a celebration of Franco-Ontarian Day in the summer of 2023. They're anticipating an audience of between 101 and 500 people. And it is a celebration of Franco-Ontarian culture that's open to all. I noticed in my review of the application, I saw significant volunteer involvement. It seems to have a thorough and clear plan for marketing the event with they've also identified that funds that they're requesting will go towards printing, signage, marketing, advertising, volunteer supplies and recognition, face paints, buses for school visits, sound technicians, and so on. But each of these items is split with funds that they've received or will receive or are aspiring to receive from Heritage Canada. So it's not entirely clear what proportion those will be divided, but that's not necessarily germane because they're eligible costs. The request will cover 2/3 of the overall project costs. And they've also included good examples of previous promotional materials from previous celebrations in their package. And one thing I did note is it does seem that some information wasn't fully complete, just around the day, month, year of the previous receipt of HCAP funding. But apart from that, it appears to be a very complete application, and their overall financial plan for the initiative and for the organization itself appears quite healthy. Who would like to go next? Maybe we start with our online compatriots, and then we'll flip the order next time. So in order, I have Miranda, and then Richard, and then Jane. Miranda, any additional thoughts that you have on this application?
Not much to add to your summary. I found that the application was really clear and well organized. I found that it was complete, having the board listing, the financial statistics, the budget, and the support material that are required for an organization working at this level. I did appreciate the overlayer of the educational components that they are planning and the way that they are networking across the community, both to spread the word about this as part of their promo plan, but also to get folks involved. And I do feel very compelled by the application and the way that they've written about making the festival happen to shine a light on an underrepresented and neglected community in our city.
Thanks, Miranda. Is there anything that you would add, Richard?
No, thank you.
Wait, Jane?
I think you and Miranda have articulated everything about the proposal. I thought it was very well written, deep, and you see the connection between what they want to do and the impact that the project is going to have on the community. And they did provide all the documents that they were asked to provide.
Thank you, Jane. Larry, any additions?
This was the first one I read, so I think I was a little tough. I found it a little vague, but you know, what can you say about having booths and music and so on? They state that it's in the fall and it's after a couple of big events at the Tender House. They're not badly off. They have quite a bit of money. They seem to get $36,000 every year from Heritage Canada, and you'll note that their audit review, I think it is as of March, so it's pretty March 2022. So it's not that far back. But we get to that point, I would change my score. Just one more thing.
Oh, yes.
I think somewhere I was trying to find it. They didn't have that many people go to it. So I was concerned about impact. But it's a small group, and they keep mentioning that they're a minority group. And so I think you have to look at it their perspective, not from, you know, how many bums did you put in the seats? It's good luck with that.
Well, this is kind of a bit difficult for me right now because I've been in the board for 3 years, but I haven't been for the past 2 years. I know this the Centre francophone very well. And the funding that they get hasn't been changed in so long. I couldn't tell you exactly, but hasn't been raised for years. Last year, they asked for a raise of that heritage funding and they didn't get it. So yes, they do get that money, but they need more and more volunteers. People are not participating as much. And last summer we had Saint Jean Baptiste, and there were hardly, not many visitors to put up this huge festival, and it's very disappointing. So this application is for the 25th of September. It's for Flag Raising Day, and it's in conjunction with Hermatinger House. And I think that they want to do more and more collaborations, and they're really, really expecting Mayor Shoemaker to be there, and they're really looking forward for that. So for me, I cannot give them more points than I have already given them, of course.
Thanks, Isabel. Any further discussion? Miranda.
Just wanted to say that we were Thinking Rock, the organization that I work with, was a vendor last summer, and I think it was the Saint Jean Baptiste Day. We were welcomed with open arms to attend. It was a lovely festival. It seemed to me like there were quite a few folks who were attending. The atmosphere was great. It was a beautiful opportunity for sharing across linguistic communities and cultural communities. And if this event that they are planning is anything like the one that I saw last year, I feel like it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for the community, a great celebration and a wonderful opportunity for coming together.
I see Jane's hand.
I just wanted to chime in and say I have attended some previous events that have been organized by this organization that were very well attended. I've also attended events that have been small. When you think about last year, people were still grappling with the pandemic, and people were not sure. Even up to now, some people are not sure whether they should go out for events in person or not. And for me, looking back pre-pandemic and having attended many of the events, I would support the fact that the organization has been doing an amazing work. When you are a minority group and you're trying to make inroads and to really visualize the work that you do, it's not easy. And any support that they can be provided should be provided to make sure that we are being very intentional in ensuring that we include all the equity deserving members of our communities in the work that we do.
Thanks, Jane. I'll just open the floor to move us further down the discussion. Would anybody, based on our current discussion, is anybody thinking that they might change their scores? Has the discussion impacted your scoring at all? There?
I just want to final total.
Yes.
10. Yeah, which is something.
Anything? Any other changes? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. I will need somebody to step in as chair, as I am in a conflict with this application. So Donna is normally who we would turn to as the vice chair of the committee. But in the absence of that, we'll take volunteers. Anybody like to lead us through the next process?
Well, I'm here and I've done this, been on this before, so I guess I'm elected maybe.
Sounds good. I will talk about my sandwich.
So this application is by it's from the Northern Ontario Latin Hispanic Association. which is an incorporated nonprofit. Uh, organization. And does anybody want to? I'll follow suit. I'll do the description of it. Following the chairman's example. They have an annual gala dinner, Latina, they call it Gala Latina, where they have Latin Hispanic dinner menu with specialty foods, and beverages, music, speakers, and the dance performances, Latin American music, and they expect to have 200 people at it. It's at the Delta Hotel every year, I think. I thought the application was very well written. In almost all respects, they remind that when they have this event, all the local businesses that they support, so that it has some economic impact. It has an impact on the perception of the Latin community in the city, not just for people of Latin Hispanic background, but to the rest of the community. And when you read through it, it looks like quite a party. They are asking for $4,999, what they would be entitled to. I'm just looking at the sheet. Northern Ontario Latin Hispanic. Says requested funding $4,900.
Not much they're eligible for is.
They're eligible. Is there a mistake there?
I'm 2,991. So how much amount requested?
Not requested.
I was relying on the scoring sheet. Anyway, the budgets are all set out. Financial statements, supporting materials. And I gave it a score of 12. It says on page 3, there's section 4, amount requested $4,900. For my glasses.
So, what is this one then on section 4?
You got the right organization.
Normal? Oh, I have. So I think there's a maximum that they're allowed to have in that stream.
They applied for the event. Double check. Generic event.
I have community events grant.
Another thing that I observed was that They won't ask us to fund the whole thing. And it's a little given in the bonnet that if we're being asked to fund the whole project, particularly if we are year after year, that bothers me.
So I can bring up where their scores are, so I'm gonna share my screen. Go. Everybody see okay, so Galilee, NOLA is line 5. I just typed it.
And I follow up on Larry's question is there any follow-up on previous grants on how successful the funding from the city has gone to their particular project?
Sorry, Richard. As far as their past grants,
So yeah, so you've given out grants in the past.
correct, yeah.
So is there any follow-up to indicate the success of that particular program with the funding that we've provided?
Good question.
And
Sorry.
yeah, so they do post grant reports. I do know that the Gala Latina is an extremely successful event that they host each year. It's generally sold out from what I understand, and it's they do the acknowledgements, we do get post grant reports as to how, the number of people attended and how the funds were used, so yeah, so I think that that's part of it. Each organization does need to follow up. We also ask that the organizations that are receiving funding do provide recognition for that funding. So you'll see that in materials that they shared in their packages each year, as well, for indicating some of the past events that they hosted based off of some of the funding they've received. Does that answer your question, Richard?
But to follow up with Richard's question, we don't get that, do we?
That's one of the things we do internally is we do double check everything, just, we're giving a lot of paper as it is, so, I mean, adding a summary or additional materials, we could look at how we do that, if that's something that the committee wants. Sometimes the post-grant reports do come with a lot of additional materials, so it could be adding anywhere from another 3 or 4 pages to another 25 pages per application to your package.
So suppose we gave them $5,000 last year for the event and they canceled the event, maybe because of COVID. Or it just went flat because there was a championship hockey game. The Greyhounds are ever in that position again. And it doesn't go so well. What do we know? What do you do?
I think
What's the impact?
we did have, so I speak to the COVID piece, we did have a number of organizations that due to COVID did have to postpone. So they did contact us and said, we're not allowed to have gatherings right now. So they ended up carrying their funding over to the next year. And then they didn't reapply for additional funding because they still had the funding that they had these previous year. So that's kind of how we handled it through COVID. If they didn't get to the attendance mark, usually in the explanations, they'll explain that, that we ended up hosting the event. We only got 60% of what we were expecting, hypothetically. And, there were numerous events that were taking place at the same time, right? So usually in their explanations, will share some of that information as well, so.
But suppose one is for an art display, like we have some applications here, or an exhibition. And, they describe all the social media that they're going to use and suit a day and so on. How many hits they expect to get watching,
Yeah.
Thousands. And then 10 people show up at the exhibition. Is that a success or is that a failure?
It's tough to answer because there's so much that's beyond your control, and like when sending out a a release on behalf of the organization, and actually will be intended for return on investment for that. We know that CJ has unique hits of over 48,000 unique people per day going to their site typically. Are they all seeing it? Maybe, maybe not, but that's what most of can estimate for the application. So that's something that needs review at a later time. I don't know if those two things are necessarily congruent in that way.
We're also, as part of the overall process, looking at how, we're doing a better job matching up the post-grant report to each type of application. Because right now it's one blanket post-grant. So that's something that we also, Alicia and I talked about that a couple weeks ago, looking at how do we do a better job of making sure that if you're looking for a small grant, what are we asking for you in post-grant to match it up versus, an organization's operating grant. So when the organizations that are nonprofit incorporated provide us with their financials, which we ask for the year, we often see in their financials, the city contributed $16,000 to this organization because they're incorporating nonprofit. So you do see how that hit their operating lines versus the smaller ones. So, we've got to look at having a couple, I think, ways of those post-grant reports coming in. If you're a $3,000 grant versus an $18,000 or $16,000 grant, that's a larger value, right? So that's something that, we need to continue to work on as well. And then if that's something that the committee wants to have as part of it, how do we give you a manageable amount of information so that it's already overwhelming, right? Making sure that it's not too overwhelming.
Using my example, your eyes, you smile when you see all the people are going to reach. But if you only had 10 people show up at your exhibition and then you apply for the same grant the next year for the same sort of thing.
Sometimes it's a matter of the type of art too.
Well, yeah, but some things are successful and some things aren't.
But how are we
Judgmental,
I'd like to see sorry, go ahead.
Right.
How are we measuring success though? Again, are we measuring success by attendance? Are we measuring success by the fact that the event happened as it was planned? These are important conversations to have for benchmarking purposes so that we have a shared definition moving forward of what that looks like.
So let's take your measure of success, Miranda. How would you measure that as a success? And how would you communicate it to staff or to us?
Well, for example, trying to communicate success around an event often ends up having to put the context into perspective. So an event happening here in Northern Ontario may end up attracting fewer people than it would in a bigger place, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't a success.
So can you have something that's not successful, Miranda?
I don't know if this is should we continue talking through the grants?
I think these are the kinds of things that go knock through my head as I'm reading all these things.
For sure. I think I can just jump in here with looking here at the post-grant report that's available on the website that we ask people to complete afterwards. Certainly we don't consider another grant before an organization or an individual has submitted this information at the very least. Moving forward, I think this is something that needs a little bit of work as well. And this is something that we can probably capture in this document and talk about it maybe per grant stream, what that looks like. So I think we can move on from there.
I think it would be good.
Yeah, and I think that's something once we get through this process, taking the feedback that we continue to hear as we evolve, we'll incorporate that into the next round of applications and, look at how we do that moving forward.
So are there any observations about this grant, or this application? Miranda? What were your observations?
With this grant, I picked up on the fact that they do talk about their success, that they have spoken about the success of this particular event in the past. I appreciate the fact that this event is a mechanism for them to generate funding for their scholarship program. And when they're commenting on their activities in the community, they are so active. They provide a very wide array of programs and services in the community and have quite a lot of visibility. Extensive volunteer support is needed to make this event happen. And I noticed too that they did include a very detailed past funding report alongside their application.
Richard, do you have any comment?
I'm glad you brought that up because I did see that they've got their past projects, and in there it does say that basically every time they can put this on, or not with COVID, they're basically having a sellout. So, I mean, obviously the success or the particular gala is a success. So
I'm just gonna try and look up this scoring sheet as we're here, and hopefully we'll have Verge this time. It looks giant. So yeah, this is looks to be the version I have. I'll share it when Verge comes back. Is there anything further?
Jane, did you have any comment?
Sorry, I'm struggling to hear today. My audio is not very good, but I get bits and pieces of what's going on. I just wanted to make a comment, and then I'll share about my findings from the application. And I wanted to go back to what you're talking about. How do we measure success? And I wanted to make a comment and say maybe we need to reflect and think about when we talk about how you measure success, how can that be done in a decolonized way and move away from the Eurocentric KPIs that we have always had in place? Because there are things that are done, you may never see the fruits immediately, but the impact will be long lasting. It may be a small event, an intimate small event with few people, but the impact of that event may be seen years to come from when it happened. So when you think about KPIs, what do you want to think about? What do you want to talk about? We might provide examples, but from a cultural safety and humility point of view, we should allow the group to be able to tell us how they measure their success, and then take a step back and learn from that. So for this particular application, I think I've attended almost all the events that this organization has planned in the past. And as Miranda had said, it's always a sold out event. The amount of work that this organization is doing in this community, it's amazing. They have brought together the Latino community in a way that it hasn't happened in our community for years. And to see the visibility of the group growing and coming up and wanting to do more, for me, is just the hunger that we have in our community to make sure that we are providing spaces, enough spaces and supports to see our diversity grow. And as our diversity grows, we as a community are also growing, and we are learning. And with that, we are helping create an intentional, welcoming community for all. That's what I wanted to add and say.
Yeah, I agree fully. And yeah, I thought this was a really good project, and yeah, fund it.
Just if I can add something, we have an increasingly diverse community. And I think we can't forget that, even though they don't say that. And in the overall cultural policy, supporting diversity within the community is important. And on success, I mean, I'd be happy even to know how they thought it was successful. You know, it brought their members together and whatever, but I think we can't just be handing out money and looking at whether it's had some impact. That's hard-headed, but there we are. You usually measure, you know, you start a project and then you measure its successes.
Well,
I'm
I've
not
seen
saying,
them
I'm
grow.
not saying this one isn't.
I've seen them like grow from small to each time it's bigger and bigger.
Well, this group was a dynamite.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they, they've created quite an impact in community impressions. Somebody goes to them, talk about it for weeks.
You can see it in their in their financial vitality, in their budget, in their organization.
Can we get our chairman back?
Yeah, are we
want to talk
talking
about
about scoring?
First, before we go? Yeah.
Okay. Did anybody want to do scoring? Or are we happy with the score so far?
I'm not sure, but we're not sharing this yet. Would you like to see it?
Oh, yeah, you can share.
Anybody changing stores?
I'll go get it.
Give them the max.
So I'm not trying to hide it. It's like confusing. I'm sorry.
Yes, it is. Also, all of my rules are over here.
I don't have this. So it's second line from the top there. Well, number 5.
Four marks.
If anybody has anything further to add, that's Sean's score there for not this point in time. So if we're okay to move on, we can have Sean back.
Too hard.
I don't think there's anything further to add this time. It's unfortunate that half the screen seems to be kind of frozen. So I'm so sorry.
What was the average?
The average on this is 12.1.
Good.
And that's it. As you can see here, just at some point, there is one application that we're below 6%. We have one, but that's for further down the line. Yeah, good. Thank you. I'm not sure how many different screens that we're seeing right now, but I can tell you. Oh, that's my intern. It's very cool. Thank you so much. Oh, the one's that.
We're on to number 3. Okay, is there a volunteer to lead the summary? Okay, well, I'll start us off again. So the Sioux Blues Society is submitting a request for $2,999 for a series of events from June 1st to February 8th of the following year. Their marketing plan seems robust based on previous experience and appropriate to the nature of the events. And they're projecting a modest surplus in their operating budget for 2023. The budget is not entirely clear, I found, as they're attributing ACAP as a funding source for more expenses than they're requesting funding for it, but I think it's logical to assume that the difference would be made up by other sources or their own pocket. The post-grant report was in order, and they're seeking an expected attendance over the course of the season for between 500 and 2,500 people. Why don't we go in reverse order? Isabel, is there anything you would add to the comments on the Sioux Blues Society?
I think it's good to have diversity in music. I like that they did a News for the Ukraine event. And yeah, I read it then pretty high.
Larry, any thoughts on the Sioux Blues Society?
Yeah, I was a little concerned about, confused by they call it an operating budget. They're not incorporated as a nonprofit, so they don't have to have an audit review or, I'm sure they don't keep QuickBooks and that sort of thing. So I was a little confused by that. And they don't have a budget for how they would use this money, but it seems that it's in the whole they do. So they talk about being a Rotary Fest, on Sioux events, Blues for Food they have. And they've been around for quite a while. I thought it was a good application.
Thanks, Larry. We're going in reverse order from previously, so Jane.
I like the fact that it was a unique ask What I struggled with is the community impact that they will have and how they will do that. But when I looked at the suggestions that they had provided on where on where they'll be doing their presentations, I thought, well, it starts to add up for me. But I don't know why I was just struggling with the application in terms of the unique addition that they continue to provide to the community, but stepping aside to think about the added value of being the only, as they had said in the application, being the only organization that does the blues in our city, I thought they bring a uniqueness that will continue to keep us vibrant in terms of arts and culture that we have in the community.
Thanks, Jane. Any additions, Richard?
Well, maybe not, maybe I'm now confused from Jane's comment, but it does talk about their activity. What it doesn't say is when those particular events are happening, other than with the Rotary Day. Obviously, it's going to happen in Rotary. But so I've been on the tourism board for a while. So from a tourism perspective, I support this one simply because one of the things that we have to have as a community, I think, in order to draw people in, is to have community events. And I think that falls right into that particular category. So that's my comment.
Thanks, Richard. I just want to go to Alicia for a point of clarification.
I see here, in their proposed budget for 2023-2024, they've listed their events, proposed, should I read them out, or?
Sure.
June 1st at Sioux Blaster, July 14th at Clear Park, Stage 2. August 31st again at Sioux Blaster, December 8th and 9th at the Water Tower Pub, and at February 8th at the Machine Shop in 2024. And they have breakdowns and budgets for all of those.
Thank you. And Miranda, any final comments?
And the dates are listed in their project plan as well. Just this is one example of an application where I wish that there was some other support material provided. Like I would really love to have heard some of the clips that had been recorded in the garage, or like had the opportunity to sample some sound or even some video from something that they've done in the past. I know that that's not something that we standardly ask for with these applications, but it does help to assess the artistic merit of what's happening. I do really appreciate the balance of their programming that they've proposed. So they're connecting with 2 different festivals, they're hosting 2 other shows in different parts of the city, and they're also including their artist roster in a fundraiser that's benefiting the community.
Thanks, Miranda. Based on the discussion, are there any further points, or is anybody interested in adjusting their scores?
I think we should write a letter to Rotary and Sioux Blaster and tell them to start paying people properly.
Any other? Seeing none, I think that it seems like everybody's happy with their scores. We'll move on to the next one, which is Over the Rainbow.
So
Thanks, Larry. From my previous experience, I'm going to suggest grabbing an extra sandwich because I get mine really quickly. Reverse order, Miranda, would you like to start us with a summary?
Sure. So looking at my notes, Over the Rainbow is applying for an operating grant of $5,000 to support activities that are happening as part of the next series of the Over the Rainbow Children's program from October 2023 to May 2024. I've got a note to myself here that it looks to me like the global budget was missing for the organization. Not sure if anybody else noticed that. As a nonprofit, that's one of the things that they needed to include with their application. It seems like they're looking to branch out promotionally. They note in their application that there are certain platforms that they're not reaching yet. And so I appreciate the strategic view that they're taking. In their budget, I found some aspects were unclear. For example, copyright, etc., and the artist fees. And the budget in general, I found to just be a little bit confusing. Let's see what else here. I've got a note here as well that says the budget and settlement in the final report shows a deficit position, but it doesn't address how that was actually dealt with, if there was anything, any surplus that was available to actually address that, to make up that shortfall. And that's what I've got.
Thank you, Miranda. I think Alicia has a point of clarification.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to say that, just to be clear, the financial statements for 2021 were included. I don't see them for 2022, but if memory serves, is that okay to say?
Yeah.
But they typically don't have those available at this point in the year.
Mm.
We can clarify that through email with the group if you'd like at a later time. This is changed.
I have a check for the financial statements and their support materials and their board list. But what I didn't see there was an operating budget for, I think, this current fiscal year. Let me go back in the application just to see what I was noting there, and come back.
In the meantime, we'll go through our circuit. Richard, any additional comments?
No.
Thank you. Jane, any additional comments?
No additional comments.
Thank you, Jane. Isabel.
I think it's very valuable and it's great.
Thanks, Isabel. And now it's me, right? I looked at this. I know I looked at it.
Myself.
Oh, here we go, over the rainbow. Yeah, just this is a recurring application. Tends to a lot of the things that I think we see in the application, they reflect a long series of experience or a long a good deal of experience running this event. The overall audience numbers, between 100 and 500, it's not super high, but at the same time, it's the high impact, I think, in the sense that it is targeting children and cultivating that future audience and engagement with arts, and not just audience, but also triggering, hopefully, interest in the arts, children too. So I would leave it there. Any other final points?
If there are any questions about financial statements or anything that you'd like to see, I'd be happy to reach out to the group and then circulate it to the committee. Is that okay?
Sure.
Great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I expect that we'll probably wrap up around 6:30, just so that people can have some semblance of life. And yeah, so is anybody interested in changing their scores, or is this simply affirming what everyone already had? Looks like
I was trying to look at the scoring there. Where is the column where it shows above 60%?
so just to the right. So a
9.
score of 9 is 60%.
Okay.
Okay to say at this point, they can see, but it's scored 11.1 at this point.
Yep. All right. So we'll move to the next item. We'll get Larry back in the room. While we're waiting for Larry to come back in, I just wanted to check in. Do we see any now that are below the 60%?
Just the one that's highlighted in yellow there, I believe it's the Fortina Canadians at 8.4.
Okay. So, I was gonna say we'll wait for Larry to come back in, and then I was gonna say something, but we may just wait for Larry to come back in, so that's the same part. Yeah. No worries. Yeah, so.
Do you have a fast way of calculating, say, 75% of amounts of money? For all the grants, do you have something that?
I bet you Virginia knows how to work Excel, but better than I do. Okay, my guess.
I can show you how to do that.
Okay, that'd be super. That's one of those pieces that hasn't.
Sometimes your responsibility is want to spread out the funds to those who are close. They're at the 65% range, let's say 70%. We want to make sure that a few get money. You kind of spread out the money, that would give less, a little bit off of each, and then you can. Do you do that?
I don't want to speak to like officially, but we've done that in the past. And we, I think the biggest concern that we have when we start to move towards that model is making sure people can still complete their project by the underfunding.
Yeah.
So as long as, but we can discuss if we get closer.
Your scores are high. There aren't that many that fell below, so. It's just
Let's see, do you still have quorum if we've got, well,
Let's hang on. Maybe we'll close this the joke.
so we still have quorum with Donna in conflict, and so we may as well proceed, and then maybe there will come in.
Yeah,
Okay, great. So we'll move on to the next item, which is Sioux Theater Workshop. Richard, would you like to provide a summary? You feel free to pass it. You don't feel like doing so, but would you like to?
No, thanks.
Okay. How about you, Jane? Would you like to provide a summary for Sioux Theater Workshop?
I wasn't able to get to that application because I just started reviewing my applications yesterday. I wasn't able to have access to them. And I didn't think it would go that far.
Well, I'm so glad that we exceeded your
I
expectations.
apologize.
No, if anything, I'm excited. In the interest of moving things along, I'm happy to I've made notes about these introductions, so I'm happy to do that. So Sioux Theater Workshop is seeking a $10,000 operating grant for its 2023-2024 season. This is a nonprofit community theater organization with a mission to provide local opportunities for engaging in and experiencing theater. It also offers a range of educational programs and workshops serving all ages and a primarily local market. Sioux Theater Workshop projects attendance over 2,500 throughout its season. Its marketing plan is based on a combination of traditional earned media and web and social media, and it's projecting around the budget projects a $2,000 surplus. Operationally, they are currently carrying a deficit of a little over 4,000. However, this also reflects the role, I think, of COVID on the regular season. So the city grant would fund material and supplies costs, including advertising, production costs, and hospitality. I guess we'll go down the line. Isabel, any additions?
I I am not yet. I'm sorry.
No problem. Larry, is there anything that strikes you about student media workshop?
I noticed the deficit. But I think your comment is fair enough. I don't think I have much more to say.
Thanks, Larry.
We're going to be paying off a deficit, help pay off a deficit. That's worth recognizing. But it contributes to the viability of a long and old organization, arts organization, the community. And the only one, well, it's not quite the only, one of very few though that does plays.
Thanks, Larry.
And represent our community at I think they're the only one going forward. Every years.
Miranda?
Just give me one moment, please, to check something else in the financials.
Problem. In the meantime, Richard, are there any comments you would have?
I don't, not really, other than, I mean, they've been around forever. They do good work. So, and the 10,000 or whatever it happens to be based on the formula, obviously it will help them continue on. So I think that's probably an important aspect.
Miranda?
Just a point of clarification, I suppose. So there's a projected budget for the 12 months ending June 30th, 2022. That's projecting a deficit of $2,080. But I noticed that the financial statements that have been included cover the same range and they're showing different numbers. So I'm just wondering if maybe the projected budget there is actually for the current fiscal. Other than that, I don't think I have anything to add. Other than just saying it would be nice to know, to have a little bit more information about what is planned. I know that that's not always possible for arts organizations, especially this early in their season, considering that their fiscal year runs, I guess, July to June. But
Brenda, could I ask that you project a bit more? Your voice is coming, it's just a little harder to hear than the others.
Sure. Where would you like me to start?
You can pick up where you last were. Sorry, just didn't want you to get too far.
Sure. So aside from my notes about the budgets and wondering about the projections, it would have been, I would have liked to have seen more information about what they were planning, as opposed to just putting in play, mostly because I'm snoopy and interested, and just want to know what the program plan is that we're being asked to fund. But I also recognize in asking that this early in the season, they may not have a good sense of what's in the works or what's in the plan.
Thank you. Alicia?
I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the board of directors. It seems that they have an entirely new slate of board of directors, including president all the way down, starting October 2022.
It is odd though that they haven't put what this year's program is. They've got last year's. On every day on Facebook, I get hit with what they're doing. They're putting on a play that's posted that is written by a local playwright. Right now, it's going to Wanda. I don't know why they don't put these things. I mean, to me, that's an important thing.
Yeah. Based on the discussion, is anybody interested to change their scores?
I think if it's okay with you, we can go get that clarification and we can come back with
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other questions that anybody had that we can try to clarify before the next meeting?
Not on this application. So the
Will we ask them also what their programming is for this year?
Yes.
The next item is Friends of Ermitanger, Third National Historic Site. Rather than, rotate, I think it's probably easier if I just provide a summary and then we'll go from there. So for this application, they're requesting $10,000 in the major cultural celebration funding and $500 in operational funding. So just as a point of clarification for any new members, this is what we call stacking, so combining different streams and that
Do that.
is permitted. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, you still have to adhere to the limits within them, but it is allowed. So this showcases cultural presenters, representative of the cultural contact that took place in the fur trade era of Sault Ste. Marie. This year includes the usual historical reenactments, but also the construction of a birch bark canoe on location, French and potentially Ojibwe language presentations and interpreters, culinary presentations as part of the Harvest Festival, and the submission. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's it for the summary. I noticed, the way that they had submitted the application, it had sort of cut off some of the explanation, but most of it was pretty apparent. They have a strong volunteer base with over 40 volunteers. I thought for these days, that's pretty impressive. This is also tied very intimately to local history and sense of local place and identity. They're expecting an audience of over 2,500 people, and they work closely with local tourism organizations, including Algoma Country and Destination Northern Ontario. They seem to have a strong marketing plan with ambitious targets, but the partnerships pull it off. The funding would be to target advertising to Upper Michigan and other Northern Ontario communities for insurance and for historic weapons, sort of replicas of these nature, as well as the canoe building workshop and artist fees and accommodations for out of town presenters. Are there, well, sorry, let's go down the line. Miranda, any additions?
Yes, I'll try to speak more loudly into my microphone this time.
Thank you.
I deeply appreciate the fact that they are very intentionally building relationships and finding ways to bring French and Anishinaabe deeply into the festival, not just as add-ons, but actually embedding it into the events that they are planning. This is another repeat applicant. We have seen over time that they seem to be quite a well-oiled machine organizationally and as far as this event goes. Nice to see the strategy and the deepening of the strategy within the marketing plan, and imagining, especially as a mechanism for COVID recovery, how to spread the word about this in ways that reach broader segments and new audiences. It's the first time that I've ever seen black powder as an item listed on a budget before, which I found extremely delightful. And it looks to me like the budget is supported really well by other revenue sources. Thanks.
Thanks, Miranda. Richard?
Just a point of clarification, the Friends of the Term Center that's a separate organization from the old Stonehouse, for lack of a better word?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the only thing I wanted to know, because I mean, basically, if it was the Ermitanger, all we're doing is passing funds from one envelope into another envelope, which as long as it's separate, I'm fine.
Thanks, Richard. Good point. Jane?
I don't have any additional comments to make. I just wanted to ask a clarification that Richard had asked. So thank you for asking that, Richard.
Thanks, Jane. Larry?
I noticed that they're reaching out they're doing marketing in Upper Michigan. And I thought that was interesting. I can tell you that the black powder works because I just live down the road here. And their cannons go boom quite often on those days, and there are a lot of people there. Like Richard, my eyebrow went up, let's put it that way, because Ermatinger House, I believe, is a city-funded organization. And so the city is funding something that is really promoting the Ermatinger House, although it's in its use. So think about that. I'm not going to complain this year, but I raise an eyebrow. Why doesn't the city allow?
Well, everything that Miranda said, plus I went last summer and it was just fantastic and just amazing. The Anishinaabe people were really present. The Métis people were there. There was a broad representation. And everybody worked so well and so fantastic. To see it alive in front of you is just amazing.
I think it's good to be promoting the use of the Ermatinger House because there's a synergy developing in that area with the Bush Plane Museum and what they call it, the Bug House.
Oh, and
And
Tom,
Tommy,
And Atomica, that whole block has become really quite interesting on Queen Street even. So I think this is an important piece of it.
oh wait, based on those comments, is anybody planning to change their scores? Seeing none. We would typically move on to the next application. However, it is 6:27. We may want to entertain a motion to adjourn for the time being and reconvening Tuesday, May 2nd. And we are more than halfway through, which bodes well for.
May 2nd or 3rd?
Oh, you might be right there. Oh, sorry, May 2nd. Yes.
May 2nd.
Okay, because I wrote May 3rd, changed it.
Sorry. Tuesday, May 2nd. Is the committee fine with this? All right. We'll have a motion to adjourn and reconvene Tuesday, May 2nd. Moved by Miranda, seconded by Larry. All those in favor? Anybody abstaining or opposed? Sorry, we can't abstain. Yeah, anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you all so much. It's always a pleasure. And also, I mean, obviously we're closed. Whatever I say doesn't matter, but one of the nice things about this is that we learn so much about everything that's coming forward in the season of comedy. There's so many of these things I haven't been to, and it's just amazing to hear about them. And just
So now that you mention that, I have another point of clarification. Are all of these events put on the community calendar that Tourism Sault Ste. Marie is operating? Do you know whether that's happening?
They're submitted to the calendar, yes.
Okay, perfect.
very good points. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Good night, everybody. We'll send out the invite soon.
And thank you both so much for all of the